On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, I welcome Kansas City sports broadcasting legend Al Wallace to the Bucket Honey's remote studios. From breaking barriers in 1985 to covering the Kansas Jayhawks courtside, Al spent over 30 years as a trusted voice in sports. But in 2011, he faced a prostate cancer diagnosis. Thanks to early detection and a strong support system, Al beat it and now shares his powerful story of resilience, family, and hope. This will be a good one. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up wherever you are or whatever you are doing? I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Bucket Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. And today, our guest is via phone interview with our esteemed guest. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow the podcast and get access to previous episodes on Facebook at Survive and Thrive 8791. The podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe or follow button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you liked what you heard. If there's a topic or you know a guest who would love to tell their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us today. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday morning featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as, but not limited to, grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, mental illness, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. Episode, guest, and intro. According to the internet, and the internet is always right, correct, Al?
Yes, always. Just absolutely, positively, 100% correct. Capital correct. All the time. Never wrong.
Well, Al, I'm glad you think that way. I don't need the internet. I don't need the World Wide Web. I don't need Alexa. In my house, I have my wife, Sarah, and she's always right. According to our AI artificial intelligence overview, in the United States, approximately 268,490 new cases of prostate cancer are estimated to be diagnosed each year, according to the American Cancer Society. This makes prostate cancer the most common cancer among men in the U.S. In the United States, approximately 34,000 men die from prostate cancer each year. While prostate cancer is a common cancer diagnosis, a significant number of men survive it, especially when detected early. However, it remains the second leading cause of cancer death in the U.S. Today, I welcome an esteemed gentleman, Al Wallace, to the Bucket Honey's remote studios via the cell phone. Raised in a military family, Al's family lived on different Army bases around the country and the world. They would eventually settle in Mineral Wells, Texas. Al attended Mineral Wells High School, located about 80 minutes west of Dallas, and is a proud Ram. After graduating from high school, Al would take his talents to Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. He would graduate with a degree in telecommunications. With college degree in hand, Al would start his 40-year career in TV sports in Lubbock, Texas, before retiring on December 18th, 2018. Today, I'm so glad he could join us. Al Wallace, what is up?
Everything is up, and that's the way I try to keep things since I retired from broadcasting 7 years ago. And I say everything is up when actually during the summer, I'm kind of down because this is my break time. Currently, I am an adjunct professor at the University of Kansas at the William Allen White School of Journalism and Mass Communication. So I'm a college professor. An adjunct means I'm part-time, so I really only teach 2 days a week during the fall and the spring. And the University of Kansas, of course, is located in Lawrence, Kansas. And kind of as a side hustle, I also give tours of the most historic building in college basketball, the most historic venue, Allen Fieldhouse. I'm a big Kansas basketball fan, have been for right at 40 years now, and it's downtime. So you ask what's up? Life is up, but during the summers I'm a bit down and I enjoy it. Put my feet up and taking time to join you here on the podcast.
You kick back, and you just mentioned you're hoping that it rains down there. I had this conversation with a good friend of yours, and as it turns out, budding good friend of mine, Pete Morris, and I was trying to figure out, in Cedar Falls, Iowa, were we in Tornado Alley? You're in Kansas City, Kansas. Are you in Tornado Alley?
Tornadoes are not foreign here, but tornadoes don't really hit, for some reason, very rarely hit the Kansas City metro area, which is where I live. I live in Overland Park on the Kansas side of the Kansas City metro area. But, tornadoes are not uncommon to this area at all. My wife was born and raised a Kansas farm girl. She grew up about 40 minutes from Overland Park or the Kansas City area. So, we're well aware of tornadoes. Now, we're going to get some severe weather here today, and I need the rain on my yard because I just had it treated from the lawn expert guy. So, waiting on the weather, and again, glad to be with you.
Absolutely. Before we get to your story, I need to talk about our sponsor quick. Our sponsor, Buck and Honey's restaurants, are a place that people can escape to. For me, it's a great escape from cooking dinner. Al, do you cook dinner?
I cook all the time. I do about 65% of the cooking here in my family.
With their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere, people keep coming back, with locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Waunakee, and Mount Horeb. Most communities in the Dane County area, and that's the surrounding Madison metropolitan area. Most people can get to Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. And if you ever venture to Madison, Wisconsin, Al, you will be my guest, and we'll get some pizza, or they get some good Italian food, but they have an outstanding menu. So look me up when you're in the Madison area. On the podcast, our guests follow the format for sharing their story like this. In segment 1, we talk about what was it like, Al's history, what happened to get Al on the podcast. And in segment 2, we continue to talk about what happened and get into what it's like now and discuss Al's 5 suggestions for thriving. So a little history lesson from Al Wallace. You grew up in a military family. What was life like growing up, moving all over the country and the world?
It was interesting, like so many other things that anyone could point out. But for me, I was a product of what I would call the 1960s. So I was born in 1957. And growing up in the military and moving around a lot, even though that was such a turbulent time in our country, it began this love affair that I had with history. And not just sports history, but just the history of our country, and so much what I would call transition and awareness, if you will, a lot of discomfort in our country during the 1960s. But because I was in a military family, Tim, we were basically insulated from that. Because living on a military base, we didn't have to go through so much unrest or tumult or discomfort that so many other black families had to go through during the 1960s. We were insulated from that. I spent 3 years during the 1960s living in Germany, on a military base in Germany. And growing up in the military, my dad always told us the most important colors were red, white, and blue. And aside from that, the other most important color was Army green. So I never really grew up, thinking the whole black-white thing. And that person's different from me, and I'm different from that person. Now, I knew the difference between black and white. When you grow up under the flag and on an Army base, sometimes overseas, you are all part of the Army family. And it didn't matter what color you were. So that's the environment that I grew up in the 60s. Now, moving back here in the late 60s, moving back to the United States, I could see some differences. And so those differences were pointed out to me and the rest of my family to a large extent. But I had 4 sisters, 3 brothers. We lived a pretty isolated life in the Army, and to be honest with you, a very comfortable life in the Army.
Yeah, that's so cool. Whenever I get a chance to talk to somebody who grew up during that time, a much different time, and you mentioned the word tumult, there was a lot going on, but I could see how you would be insulated from that being in an Army family. And I really like that little quote from your dad that the most important colors are red, white, and blue. Yeah. And when you started talking about that, Al, I kind of want to reference this again for the people that are listening. There's a book that was written about Al, and how he grew up, one for the Coyotes, how he survived 40 years of his dream job in TV news. Once you started talking about some of those things and that quote from your dad, I went right back to the book. I had just read the book probably a couple months ago in preparation for this would-be podcast. You kind of brought me back right into the pages of this book. You have a family of your own, an amazing wife and two amazing daughters. Go ahead and spin some yarns about them.
I mentioned before that, my wife was born and raised on a farm just south of Lawrence. And until to this day, she has never lived anywhere else except the state of Kansas. So I met my wife in Lawrence at a KU-MU football game, Kansas, Missouri. And I'm just thinking, I'm wondering how many times in our discussion today here on this podcast am I going to mention, history. But Kansas and Missouri played a football game November 24th, 1991. My wife was the press box elevator operator, and I'm covering that game as a sports reporter. And as soon as I got on the elevator, I saw her, and instantly I was in love. I tried to figure out over the next 3 hours during that football game reasons to ride the elevator, to do something, to get on that elevator so I could see her, talk to her. She's thinking I'm this knucklehead, I'm sure. I met her that day. I went home that night, and I called my brother, and I said, I met my wife today. And kind of funny, I didn't see her again for another 2 months. But I did. Asked her out for a cup of coffee after a Kansas basketball game, and we went to a Perkins restaurant and sat, had a cup of coffee, talked. I think our first date was 2-3 weeks later. We got married 4 years later. Had a couple of daughters. My wife told me at the time, because she was born in Lawrence, but she said if we ever get married, while we were dating, she said if we ever get married and have kids, they will be born in Lawrence, Kansas. No matter, we hadn't planned on leaving the Kansas City metro area, but twice when she went into labor, I was on the highway driving the 33 miles to Lawrence. So I could get them to get her to Lawrence Memorial Hospital to give birth. Worked out fine both times, and both of my daughters are now graduates of the University of Kansas, and they're doing well. We just celebrated Father's Day. I couldn't be happier.
You're giving a lot of the book up here, Al. Nobody's going to want to buy the book because you're telling all these awesome stories that they're coming right back to me. Your family would eventually settle in Mineral Wells, Texas, where you would attend the local high school, class of 1975. Are you a proud Ram?
Very proud Ram, and we just had our 50-year high school reunion 2 weeks ago.
You did?
Yes. Oh, yeah. It was good to go back, see a lot of, 50 years. Wow. Good to go back and see a lot of old friends, people that I grew up with. In high school, basically anything in Texas is, from a young person athletic sports standpoint, you're connected to football. You've heard the saying, maybe, there are three sports in Texas: football, politics, and spring football. And so my connection and affection to the sport of football is tremendous. And when you mix that in with growing up in a military family, I definitely understood and continue to understand the meaning of the word discipline. And all of that has helped make me the person that I am today.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier before we started the telecast that I have kind of a little bit of a weird bucket list, but on my bucket list is to spend about 2 weeks, if I can, in Texas during the fall. And I would love to hit 2 high school football games on but one Friday, and then stay through the next Friday and catch a couple of high school games, because I heard through the grapevine and through several books that Texas football is a religion down there.
The Texas football weekend, to be quite honest, starts on a Thursday night, and it does not end until the Cowboys, not the Houston Texans. It doesn't end until the Cowboys are done playing. Now, sometimes the Cowboys play on a Sunday night or a Monday night, but sometimes your football weekend in Texas goes 5 days, because you have to be aware that there are Thursday night high school games, there are Friday night high school games. Now, there's Friday night and or Thursday night college games, and then you've got your 2 professional teams. Certainly, the Cowboys playing on either Sunday or Monday. It's not a maze, but it is a lot. And football fans in Texas find different ways to enjoy football, whether they attend a game or not. It's a social event. It is a social phenomenon. The entire community is connected like no other place or no other state in the country because there are so many. There are more big class high school football teams in the Houston area than there are in the entire state of Kansas. And I would venture to say the same thing about the state of Missouri. In my book, One for the Coyotes, I mentioned the fact that if you ever win the lottery and you are able to rent a Learjet, fly across the state on a Friday night, and as low as you can go, just look around down on a dark Friday night to see all the high school football stadiums lit up.
In Texas.
In Texas. It's a sight to behold. Football is almost everything in Texas.
Well, you got the hair on the back of my neck standing up a little bit. I'm thinking about that and when I'm going to rent that Learjet. After high school, you would take your talents to Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. What was the lure for Texas Tech?
Yeah, I had some friends, high school friends going to Tech. I always wanted to go to the Southwest Conference school, Texas Tech. To be honest with you, was the easiest one for me to get into. I didn't want to go to the University of Houston. They were the easiest ones to get into. My grades weren't the best, to be quite honest with you. And I wanted to play football in the old Southwest Conference. So I walked on at Texas Tech. I lasted 2 weeks. I made the freshman team. Maybe at the time we called it JV, junior varsity. And I lasted 2 weeks before I got cut. After that, to be honest with you, I was lost. Because football had played quite a huge part of me growing up. And when I didn't have football anymore, I majored in telecommunications. I always had a dream of being a sportscaster, but that's basically as far as it went, was a dream. I didn't know what I would need to do to fulfill that dream other than go to school and make grades. Well, I always made terrible grades. I was a terrible student. And when I lost football, when I lost that direction and that discipline, I was basically lost for about a year and a half. I got a summer job, numerous summer jobs my first 2 years that I would come home for the summer. After my third summer of coming home, my dad told me, as I'm headed back to school in August, my dad tells me, hey, look, this is it. We're cutting you loose if you don't succeed in some way, shape, or form or show us some progress. Financially, we're cutting you loose. And he basically said, I'll see you in a couple of weeks because I'm going back to school, right, without a job. So this is early August. I'd saved about $500. He said, I'll see you in 2 weeks because he didn't think I'd find a job and last and be able to support myself. Well, I go back to school. I go back to Lubbock, and I got a part-time job parking cars before the semester started, and I hated that, so I quit it after about a week. And then I got a job working at the local newspaper. I figured that's closely tied with media. I got a job at the newspaper where I would be pulling the print newspapers off of the printing press, and I would get ink all over me. And I was told that I have to wear those old tube socks. Remember the tube socks that come up to your knee? Mm-hmm. I'd have to wear those on my arms, around my hands, because I would be getting ink all over my sleeves. So I had to wear those. Well, when I was ready to start the job, but I never made it to that job. I just never, the first day I was supposed to report to work, I just never showed up because I couldn't get that image out of my mind. Classes started. I don't have a job. This is around Labor Day, late September or early September when classes start. I still don't have a job. And I'm walking across campus and I see a former classmate, a girl that I had a class with. And you know how that goes as you walk across campus and you see someone you hadn't seen since the spring. Hey, how you doing? Fine. And she said, what'd you do this summer? I said, I was back in my hometown of Mineral Wells and I worked at Acme Brick. Tim, you don't know hot until you work in a brick factory in July in Mineral Wells, Texas. And it could be more than 130 degrees in those brick kilns where where the bricks are made from just clay. And that was my summer job. But I made $500 saved, right? And then I asked her, I said, what'd you do this summer? And she said, I got a job at a TV station. I got a job at KAMC, the call letters for the TV station, KMAC.
KMAC.
And I said, you're kidding. She said, no, she's a year younger than me. She said, no, I got a job at KMAC. And I said, doing what? She said, sweeping floors and running prompter, running camera. And I said, wow. She said, hey, we got some openings. You ought to go out there and apply. And I'm blown away that this girl, a year younger than me, already had a job at a TV station. And so I went and applied. Guy gave me a job. Sweeping floors, running teleprompter. $2.90 an hour. And
those were the days.
Yes. And to wrap this little story up, Tim, all my life living in Texas, junior high, high school, I had football, I had the military, I had discipline, I had the cohesiveness of two different family structures, team structures. And when I lost football, I lost all of that. But when I started working in TV, all of that reappeared for me. And unlike football, where I had one game a week for 5-6 years, junior high, high school, one game a week. In Texas, when we were in high school, we had spring football too. We had a spring game. You know, we suited up in pads in the spring. It was a whole another half a season. But when I lost football, I lost all of that. But then when I got that job in television and we had to gear up for a newscast, 2 newscasts every day, I found once again that teamwork and that family that I had missed by not having football. And after 2 weeks of working in television, I didn't have one game a week. I had 2 games every day because we had 2 newscasts every day that we had to prepare for as a team, as a unit, and knowing in the back of our minds we got to do this together to succeed. After 2 weeks of working in television, I was in love with the industry. And I said, I can do this for the rest of my life.
I'm still sweating thinking about that brick kiln, tin shed. You're probably Acme Brick Company. I love it. You earn a degree in telecommunications and you jump right into sports TV. And you already gave us kind of that. You're picking up thumbtacks. You're sweeping tables. You're probably bringing in coffee. In 1985, you're hired at WDAF-TV, Fox 4 in Kansas City, and you had spent 33 years at the station. How did you land that job? When I think of Kansas City, I think that even though it's a smaller market, I think Kansas City's, because of their teams and how good they've always been, I think of that as a big city.
Well, I'll start there with the Kansas City and the sports environment here. No, Kansas City does not have an NBA team. We don't have a hockey team. We don't have an NHL team. We have very high-profile Major League Baseball and NFL teams, of course. But Kansas City also has NASCAR. We get two NASCAR races every year. Kansas City, by many, is seen as the soccer capital of the United States. We're right in the middle of the country. We've got a Major League Soccer team here. We've got a National Women's Soccer League team here in WSL. High school sports prevalent here. Every high school sport, both sides of the state line. We've got 3 major universities within easy driving distance, Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. The Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is here. But how did I land here? I was a graduate in 1975 high school. I lived in Lubbock for the next basically 10 years until January of 1985. I had been there too long. I was not enjoying living in Lubbock, Texas, or in West Texas as a young black man in the early 1980s. Okay? It was time to go. And I wanted to take the first job I could get. And the first job I could get was a job in Las Vegas, Nevada. So I took a job in Las Vegas. I was there for 3 months. I never really unpacked. And because I was on a probation period, I never signed a contract. But before I took the job in Las Vegas, I did apply for jobs. I sent resumes to Atlanta, Kansas City, and San Diego. I knew those were large markets that had major league sports I wanted to cover. And at the time, Kansas City had the old NBA Kings. And I never heard back from anybody. I got a don't call us, don't call you letter from the CBS station here in Kansas City. But I took the job in Las Vegas, and I hated it. I hated living in Las Vegas. There was some minor league sports there, but there was nothing like today. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at Las Vegas today. It's leaps and bounds. They got women's basketball, NFL. They're getting a Major League Baseball team. They got the NHL. It's a great sports market now. Not in 1985. And I was working there, and I got a call. I had sent a resume tape here to Kansas City, to WDAF, which at the time was an NBC affiliate, the oldest NBC affiliate west of the Mississippi, a storied television station, heavy in news and sports coverage. But I never heard back from them. And I was working in Las Vegas for 1 month. I worked every day for a month. They had fired the main sports guy and the weekend sports guy. They hired me to do weekends, and then the main news guy was going to do sports, was going to be the main sports guy. But I had to work every day in the month of February, and I did. And that's part of the reason I hated living there, because I was working every day. I went in on my first day off just to help the new sports guy put a sportscast together because he had never done it. I went in to help him. Again, one for the Coyotes, doing one little extra thing from a work ethic standpoint. That's what I was always taught by my dad, by my high school football coach. Do what you have to do, but do one little extra thing. Do one for the Coyotes. And the Coyotes were the best high school football team in the state of Texas. They were in our district, and they beat us all the time. But we knew if we had to beat those guys, we had to do one extra thing all the time, every day of the year. Do that in the effort to beat the Coyotes on that one night. We never did beat them, but that's what the mindset was. So I went in on my first day off. I went in to work, and I worked 1 hour. And while I was there, I got a phone call from WDAF-TV. They called looking for me in Lubbock, couldn't find me, found out I was working in Las Vegas, and said, do you still want to come work here? And that's what drew me to Kansas City. That one day where I came into work for 1 hour to do one extra thing to help somebody else out, that helped land me the job in Kansas City and helped me for the next 33 years. I started in television in 1978. I retired in 2018, 40 years. How about that?
That is crazy. I'm going to move on to the next part because that's going to kind of tie in the December 2018. So in December 2018, you sign off as sports broadcaster in Kansas City for the last time. And because I like to do a little research on all of my guests, I had an opportunity to see your last little thank you and goodbye and we'll see you later. What was that like, unplugging the mic and whatever you guys do when they say 3, 2, 1, boom, we're done. What was that like on that last day?
It was really tough. And the toughest part of that day was earlier in the afternoon where it was me and 2 other guys who were all stepping away and retiring. And I was the last one to speak to a gathering of everyone at the TV station. And I couldn't get through the notes and everything that I had typed up about what I was going to say in my goodbye. I could cut, I bet you it went 3 minutes, and I probably got through 15 seconds before I started to choke up. The main news anchor came down, grabbed a piece of paper, and John Holt, he read what I had typed up and written down, and he did a great job of giving me a hand. But that was tough. I was so ready to be done. 40 years is a long time in that industry. And what I mean by that is, especially working in sports or news, but in working sports, I never felt comfortable, Tim, if I didn't know on a Saturday what all 3 local teams, Kansas, Missouri, and K-State, I needed to know how they won their football game and how they lost their football game. I needed to know how the Royals won or lost every single of their 162 games. So I had to watch. That was just a day-to-day thing for me for 33 years. I needed to know why the Chiefs won, why the Chiefs lost. I put my family on the back burner, and just to be able to do my job properly, because I knew if I did my job properly, if I did my job right, I stood a better chance of keeping my job and providing a comfortable living for my family. And I missed a lot of stuff with my family. And in 2018, I knew that I'm getting close to the end. But in March of 2018, March of 2018, one of my older sisters passed away from during a routine medical procedure. She developed some complications. She was having back surgery. She developed some complications, and she died. And that helped me realize that family is everything. I had a streak, Tim, of covering Kansas basketball. I saw every Kansas basketball game in the NCAA tournament. I sat courtside for every game from 1991 until 2018. 27 years. They played 99 games. Kansas played 99 games in the NCAA tournament. I sat courtside for 95 of those 99 games. I missed 2 games because they were played in Kansas City, and I let somebody else go and have the seat. And I missed 2 games to attend my sister's funeral. And there were a couple of people in my family that said, hey, look, we can put this family gathering off. We can put this off for another week so you can continue your streak. And I said, no, screw the streak. And so I missed games for the first time, and I can't tell you how long. And that just kind of got to me. But I wanted to work 40 years, which I did, September 2018. Dating back to, remember, Labor Day, 1978, when I got my first job. I saw that 40-year marker, but I also wanted to work in 6 different decades, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, the 2000 teens, and I wanted to get to January 1st, 2020. But then when I was offered a buyout in December of 2018, where they would pay me another year just to walk away. I don't know. Maybe I was making too much money, and it wasn't just me. So I accepted it. I just said, hey, if you're going to pay me right up till January 1st, 2020, I'll take it. I had done my 40 years. I'd done 5 different decades, and that was good enough. So I stepped away. Remember that the movie Shawshank Redemption, and at the end where Red's on the bus headed to Mexico to meet his buddy, Andy Dufresne, and that little speech that Red gives. And he says something to the effect of, I'm about to take another journey, and I don't know where it's going to end. That's how I felt the day I left. I was doing backflips. That
is one of my favorite movies of all time. December 2018, about 6 to 7 years before you signed off for the last time, you would go on to battle a little something else that we're going to get into in segment 2. But because our listeners want to hear about your cancer diagnosis and how you have become a survivor, I need to talk about our sponsor one more time, and we'll get moving on to segment 2 here. Buck and Honeys has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew since the beginning, with 4 locations in the Madison, Wisconsin area. One is always near. People ask why Buck and Honeys. Owner Tom Anderson places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He has a mental health professional available for them should they need support. I don't know how many businesses go above and beyond their EAP, Employee Assistance Program, but Buck and Honeys does. In 2011, Al Wallace is diagnosed with prostate cancer. He would have surgery in early 2012, and he's with us today to talk about that journey, not only through his sports journey, but also through his cancer journey. You're going to hear how that all has turned out. Please stay tuned. Don't change that channel. You're not going to want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365, and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim Decora. We are in the Buck and Honeys remote studios in Madison, Wisconsin via phone today with our esteemed guest, Al Wallace. The podcast is where I feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. Al Wallace is here today to share his story about how he fought prostate cancer, continued to work, and how he has survived and thrive. Al hopes his story will help inspire others who might get the same diagnosis to survive and thrive. Since the show has a mental health component to it, did you experience any anxiety dealing with the diagnosis or depression, thinking about what life was going to be like after the diagnosis?
To be quite frank and honest, Tim, I was lucky. And I was lucky because of early detection. My family had and continues to have a heavy history of cancer. I had 4 sisters, all 3 diagnosed with some form of cancer. My mom died of cancer, although she was a heavy smoker. And my little brother has been diagnosed with prostate cancer. So when I was diagnosed, it was no surprise to me. When I got the phone call, because I'd gone in for a routine checkup because I had just turned 50. Black guy, 50 years old, high blood pressure. You got to check these things. And so I had it checked out, but when they called me back, when I got a return call and I looked at the caller ID, University of Kansas Hospital, I knew what this phone call meant. Something in the back of my mind said, I've got cancer. And boom. They said, hey, you need to come back in, do a biopsy. So, and we caught it way early. I was just lucky. And I was also lucky because I had worked with a couple of guys at the TV station that had both been diagnosed with the same thing. So they were able to help me. They talked me through so many things. And we had a health reporter at the time, and she had had breast cancer. And then I had all these resources. University of Kansas Hospital. I just had so much help that, to me, I didn't really struggle with it. The toughest thing for me, Tim, was telling my kids, because we had a neighbor across the street who had been diagnosed with brain cancer, and that family knew that, Rob wasn't going to be with them much longer. He was diagnosed in 2002, and God bless, he didn't leave this earth until 2017. They thought they were going to have him 2 more years. He stayed around for another 13. But I didn't have the mental struggle, or because we caught it so early. And so I never had chemo. I just had my prostate removed. Yeah, I never had radiation. I just had my prostate removed because I didn't want to have to think about it any longer than I did. And so I would consider myself very lucky.
During these times of, you didn't have many mental struggles, but you said that maybe the hardest thing about that whole situation was telling your daughters. So what was that conversation like with your daughters? And then how did you help them keep the peace with their mental struggles?
They obviously knew, what was going on. So one daughter was 12, the other was 17, and they were great friends with the family across the street. So they knew Rob had cancer. They knew what cancer was. Don't make no mistake. But I was diagnosed in November, and we immediately decided to have the prostate removed, my surgery, in early February, because after the biopsy, I had to let the prostate heal. You have to let it heal before you can take it out. So there was no reason to tell them immediately I had cancer. I had a surgery set up to remove the prostate on a Thursday. We didn't tell them until the Saturday night before that Thursday. So late January is when I told them. And I think it was a shock to them. But again, we told them how fortunate I was for the early detection. The next 6 months, the next year are going to be interesting. Hang in there. Hopefully we'll get through this thing. We did. They handled it great. My wife handled it better than anybody. I mean, I couldn't have been an easy patient, having to stay home for a while. My family, man, they were rock solid. And I'm saying that, a couple of days after Father's Day. Man, I'm a lucky dude. And I'm mostly lucky to have them. I'm also very lucky, and you mentioned it at the top of the podcast, early detection. Man, don't wait. And I'm glad I didn't. Early detection.
Yeah, I think it's key that you had some genetics working on your side, and I've had a couple of guests come on and they said, hey, because I had this happen to me, immediately my brother or my sister went in and got checked out, and sure enough, they were along the same path I was. So that's important, that the genetic stuff, that you definitely pay attention to that early detection, and then certainly education on prostate cancer education. And you have all of those facilities right near you that were able to talk you through all of that stuff. And then you could educate your children. So anybody that's going to be looking at this podcast and saying, how did he get through prostate cancer early detection? You didn't have many struggles dealing with that, but you were able to help your wife and your kids through your diagnosis. That's going to help. That's going to help somebody in the same boat. So after surgery in early February 2012, you're on that road to recovery. What did that recovery look like for you?
I was on some medication, mainly just for pain. I couldn't, and because of that, I couldn't drive. I could leave the house, but I couldn't drive. People were doing stuff for me. It was a challenge being away from work because I'd always been so busy and, to be honest with you, quite healthy. Not anymore. But I was only away from work. I was away from work just 3 weeks. And my surgery was February 2nd. And on I think it was February 25th, 2012, the University of Kansas played host to the University of Missouri basketball, men's basketball, the last time that both schools would be in the same conference because Missouri had just decided to leave the Big 12 and join the SEC. And so Missouri playing at Kansas was going to be the last game that KU would host Missouri at Allen Fieldhouse as members of the same conference. And I said to myself, not even cancer will keep me away from that game. I attended that game. That was my first day back at work. So I was gone for just 3 weeks.
Not a hard man to hold down. So I've heard the magic number of years after a cancer diagnosis is 10 years that you can consider yourself essentially cancer-free. Is that true for you?
Very true for me. In fact, I used to go in once every 6 months, definitely for a big checkup, and now I do it once a year only just because I want to know what's going on. I don't have to do it. I've been told I don't have to do it, starting back in 2022. But once a year, I'll go in and get a full checkup and, check out all my numbers. And everything is, 0.04, 0.06, 0.03 when it comes to my PSA numbers. I'm real fortunate. Last year and this year, I started just doing the telehealth, just basically a Zoom call with my doctor. I don't have to do it, but I want to do it. I'm just as dedicated to that as I am, as I was when I decided to have an early checkup, early detection. That's kind of where I am right now, 10 years. But think, guys, the technology and the research, and it's just not what it used to be. It's just, it's so advanced now, so advanced. I had my prostate removed via a robot, a Da Vinci robot. Like when you go to the grocery store and you see those little machines where kids can put in a quarter and you use those grappler arms. Yeah, the claw. Yeah, that's how I had. A robot took out my prostate, and that was 13 years ago. So things are a lot better, but the fight's never over because someone or that you saw today, someone is going to be diagnosed with prostate cancer. It's going to happen.
Well, I'm very fortunate to have gotten an opportunity to meet you, and I forgot to tell you that my wife, Sarah, said to say hi to Al, and I'm glad that you were able to get back to it then later in February 2012, and you hung on for 6 more years. And Kansas City and WDAF Fox 4 in Kansas City was probably very happy that you were back in the sports chair, sports desk. In 2018, you retired from WDAF-TV Fox 4 in Kansas City, a career that lasted 33 years. During that time, you racked up some very cool accolades. Tell me what you think when I mention some of these, and I want you to take about 60 seconds if you can. The first one, most influential African American in Kansas City in 1998. Go ahead and hit that.
I remember that. I used to do Derek Thomas's radio show. Derek Thomas, the linebacker, used to play for the Chiefs. He was a good friend, and he passed away. He died after an injury in a car accident where he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. I was very attached to Derek, his Third and Long Foundation, and in 1998, I know that was part of the reason I was honored there with the most influential African American. Among those, most influential African Americans, plural, in Kansas City. Now that I look back on it, yeah.
All right. Number 2, Gordon Docking Award winner by the GKCFCA for his outstanding contribution to high school coverage in 2009. Go ahead and touch on that.
That's the Greater Kansas City Football Coaches Association. So over the years...
Say that 5 times in a row quick.
Yeah. So over the years, just the way the WDAF-TV and Fox 4 covered high school football and all of high school athletics. And to be honest with you, I retired in 2018, but as a staff, as a sports department, we decided in the early 2000s that, we cover a lot of high school football, but when we did a team of the week, it was never a football team. It had to be a girls team or an or an Olympic sport, an off-season sports team, because football and basketball got enough coverage. So we diversified way early, I think, among when you compare us to other stations. And that's one reason that I was singled out there. Now, Gordon Docking, I used to work with him at Fox 4. He was there before I got there, and I worked with him for a number of years. Gordon Docking is the guy who started heavy-duty high school sports coverage back in the early 1980s. And that's why that award is named after him. So it was full circle. And I got it hanging here in my office, that Gordon Docking Award, that plaque. So that was a big honor. That really meant something because Gordon led the way and started high school football coverage. If to be quite frank with you, he started high school football coverage in Kansas City for television. Yeah.
And he handed you the baton and you ran with it.
Not as well as he did, but yes, thank you. Yeah.
Honored by the Olathe branch of the NAACP with its Diversity Advocate in Sports Awards in 2017.
So I live in Overland Park, and Olathe is just right next door. So in between Overland Park and Lawrence is Olathe. I think there are 5 high schools in Olathe, and their branch of the NCAACP gave me this award. And it kind of hit home. I remember when the speech I gave when I accepted this award, it happened we had this ceremony, this banquet, this award ceremony on Martin Luther King Day, early February. When I was growing up, we lived in Fort Meade, Maryland, back in the early 60s. In fact, my oldest sister was dying to attend the March on Washington, where Martin Luther King Jr. Would give the I Have a Dream speech. But my mom wouldn't let her go. And to be honored with this award on that night, it made me think of my sister who couldn't go because of my mom not allowing her to go with her classmates. That late summer of 1963, my mom wouldn't let her go. How about that?
Yeah, that's crazy that she would have saw one of the greatest speeches ever. And then the last one, from your book, you said you were the first full-time black sportscaster in the Kansas City market. Tell me how that rings a bell with you. I
don't want to say groundbreaking, but a lot of my life has been about history and being a part of history. And I will never shy away from. I will own that for as long as I live. You will own that. This was my first what I would call major sports market job. I was known as, the black guy on Channel 4. The sports guy on Channel 4, the black guy. Yeah, I'll own it gladly. Nobody will take that away from you. Black guy. Any other TV station, any black guy can stay there for 33 years. Props from me. Good luck. You have the keys to what it takes to get there, and you're about to share those with our group. So this is where the subscribers, followers, and listeners take out the notebooks, pens, or pencils and jot these things down. And if you don't want to jot them down, they're probably buried. They are buried in One for the Coyotes, a book about Al Wallace's career. Here are Al's 5 suggestions that have allowed him to survive and thrive while working in sports broadcasting industry and also putting his dukes up against cancer. Here's what you shared. And I'm going to have you hit these in about 60 seconds. I'm going to toss these in underhand softball style. Al, can you hit a softball? Yep. Number 1, family over everything. Go ahead and hit that. You have numerous families. You got your blood family, your family at home. You've got your work family, and maybe you've got your team family. If you put the importance of those in front of everything else, you'll be just fine. But your family should be the most important. My belief is your family should be the most important thing in your life. Anything that you do that's going to embarrass your family or put your family in a bad light or reflect negatively on your family, stay away from it. Family over everything. Number 2, responsibility. Go ahead and hit that. Responsibility. You are responsible for the care of your family. I always felt like I was responsible for my kids, their comfort, roof over their head, something to eat. Same thing with my wife. I still feel responsible. My dad always felt responsible for himself, his wife, and his 8 kids. That's where I got that from, responsibility. Number 3, ethics. Go ahead and hit that. ethics, and especially in journalism. Tell the truth. You are responsible for the truth in journalism. If people can't depend on you and your ethics are your actions, not what you say. Your ethics are what you do, your actions. So journalistic ethics, tell the truth, report the facts, stick with the facts. And if that's your foundation, you'll be just fine.
Number 4, represent the viewer, the reader, the public, and yourself. Go ahead and hit that.
As a journalist, sports journalist, news journalist, as a journalist, when I attended an event, I didn't attend it for me. I attended it for those people. I was able to be there to ask questions of the players and the coaches, to ask them why they won, why they lost, why did you make this move, why did you make this decision, why did you do this, why did you do that. It's my responsibility to represent the public. Representing myself always took a back burner to representing the TV station I worked for and those others at the TV station that I worked with. We all represent the viewer and or the reader. Representing myself, secondly, always represent the public first. Because they can't go to that press conference. They're not allowed access. I am. I got to represent them, and I've got to be the one to ask the questions that they want asked.
And the last one, storytelling. Go ahead and hit that.
Storytelling. I love telling a story. Can't you tell, Tim? Last hour or so, I've been telling a lot of stories. I love telling stories. If you know how to tell a story, if you don't know how to tell a story and you want to get into broadcasting, you need to learn how to tell a story. One of my favorite series on television, I'm a big movie guy, and I've turned into a big series guy, is Game of Thrones. And in the last episode, Tyrion Lannister, the little guy, right? And he says, a story is the most powerful thing in the world. Nothing can stop it. And storytelling has to be at the foundation of what any good journalist does. You've got to be able to tell a story. I tell my students that all the time. You got to be able to tell a story because that's what you do. You pick up an article, newspaper, magazine, you watch stories on TV. Everybody loves a good story. And that's what you've had me on this podcast. That was all I'm doing, telling stories about myself and my life. I love a good story. I
love a good story, too, because it's one of those things that can be a coping strategy for a lot of people that are suffering from something. Yep. You can just pull them away for an hour or 2 hours, or certainly for you, 5 to 10 minutes of just a little breakdown, 5 to 10 minutes of this story and that story and how Al grew up in mineral wells and how I grew up in Germany and how we got here. And your journey and your story is very cool, very inspirational, and it has led to a great career in sports broadcasting. What a great episode. I'm so glad you could join the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew today. Your story and how you seem to thrive wherever you have gone is inspiring. Your story reminds us all to have coping skills and mental health tools in the toolbox when a person is on the move like you were, and you have adapted and have survived and thrived. Our call to action. Al Wallace just shared his story on what it's like to grow up in a military family, live in many parts of the world, and eventually spend nearly 50 years in sports TV. He's had to survive his work world and fight cancer in the end of that journey. Here are Al's 5 suggestions that have helped him survive and thrive. Number 1, family over everything. Number 2, responsibility. Number 3, ethics. Number 4, represent the viewer and the reader and yourself. And number 5, storytelling. As we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, are there any final thoughts, Al?
I just want to say thanks for inviting me on. I've enjoyed it, and I hope I've been able to help anyone. My final thought is in relation to prostate cancer, any cancer, early detection is the key. Don't wait. People love you. Don't let them go on without you. Just check it out. Early detection is the key. And again, Tim, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was a great episode. I'm glad we could reconnect, and I hope to be back down in Lawrence. And when I sign up for that tour of Allen Fieldhouse, I'm going to ask if Al Wallace can take us on that tour. And if Al Wallace is not available, we will wait as long as it takes.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. On our next episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we will have another amazing guest in the Buck and Honey's remote studios who will share how they learn to survive and thrive. If you have a story to share or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecora@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.